there are moments when the stage doesn't just illuminate, it exposes all the things we try to hide. Gary, Indiana, a Jackson 5 practice night, 1966. I still vividly remember the moment I stepped into the small practice room at Roosevelt High School that night. The smell of old wood mixed with the warmth of the stage lights made the room breathe. Each footstep on the wooden floor made me feel like I was entering a place not just for practice, but a place where each of us would be tested on our mettle. And the sound of my guitar strings, newly tuned, was as taut as my own nerves. Jackie was checking the microphone. Jermaine was adjusting the bass. Marlon was fiddling with his newly issued white gloves. Everything was normal. Too normal for the Jackson 5. Only Michael wasn't normal. And that 7-year-old boy, our little star, stood in front of the empty audience and stared as if there was something in the darkness. His gaze wasn't a childish blank stare, but rather a stare that seemed to be facing some invisible challenge. I'd never seen him get that like that before. From where I stood, his small shoulders trembled slightly, very slightly, but enough for me, his older brother, to feel. "Michael, are you okay?" I asked quietly, as if afraid to break the thick atmosphere. He didn't answer right away. He just took a deep breath, then turned to me and gave me a smile I knew very well, the smile of pretending to be okay so no one would worry. But that night, I knew he wasn't okay. The stage lights had only just been turned on as a test, the white light as sharp as a knife. As they swept across Michael's face, I saw him close his eyes for a moment as if the light was too strong. Some people later said the lights made him dizzy. That was just a rumor, no? Oh, no one but on us is But I knew for sure if anything made him tremble, it wasn't the lights. It was the invisible pressure of knowing that his voice was the heart of the group. The room, less than 100 square meters, suddenly became a giant theater where every mistake was magnified tenfold. I stepped closer, put my hand on his shoulder. Michael jumped slightly, then smiled a little. "I'm fine, Tito," he said, but his eyes didn't look fine. "Shall we take our forward positions?" And the conductor tapped out the beat. 1, 2, 3. Then the bass came first, then my guitar. Jackie's claps joined in, and finally the voice, the one that should have come from Michael. But tonight, and it didn't come, Michael stood there, still holding the microphone, but not saying a word. His eyes were wide open, staring straight at the door at the end of the room as if he saw someone's shadow. I followed his gaze and saw only emptiness. No one. The door was ajar. No wind, no sound. But Michael seemed to be held... Michael held back by someone or something. He didn't move at all. I tried to keep the rhythm of the guitar, but each string sounded out of place. I looked at Jermaine. He was panicking. I could see it. Jackie, she frowned, trying, to hit harder, Tito to pull Michael into the melody. And Marlon, not understanding what was happening, stood there with wide eyes. In my head, everything was running fast like a fast-forwarded movie. Michael had never forgotten the lyrics, never stopped, never let the stage get to him. So what was going on? The room, which was usually noisy with guitar sounds, suddenly became eerily quiet. Our out-of-sync sounds could no longer hide the truth. Michael was frozen. He looked around, his eyes panicked but silent. I saw his hand grip the microphone until it was white. A cold feeling swept down my spine, not because it was cold, but because I had never seen Michael like this. He was like a child left in the middle of a storm with no one to run, to hug him. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like the practice room could hear it. I wanted to run to him, to break the distance that made my brother seem smaller than ever. But if I stopped playing guitar, they must all part. Collapse. Everyone would look at Michael like he had done something terrible when he was just a kid who needed a big brother. I shifted my position a little, walking slowly toward him, but still playing the guitar, trying not to let anyone notice what I was doing. I wanted to stand between him and the cold room. "Michael," I called softly, almost to the point that only he could hear. It turned its head slowly as if waking from a strange dream. The look it gave me made my heart clench. It wasn't the look of a young singer about to perform. It was the look of a frightened child trying not to cry in front of the lights. The sound in the room seemed to be swallowed up. Only the sound of my heartbeat remained in my ears. I could feel it clearly. Something was very wrong, and I, the eldest brother who had to stand firm when the group was swaying, knew that everything was just beginning. That small pause in the music, like it was the moment that changed everything that was to come. The last sound from my guitar lasted less than a second, but it felt like it was sucked into an invisible vacuum that surrounded Michael. The room froze with it. I saw Jackie try to play a few more beats, hesitant clicks, and then stop. Jermaine lowered his bass, his face as tense as a string that had been tightened too much. No one said anything, no one dared. Only Michael's rapid breathing could be heard, small but sharp, like the scraping of metal on glass. I remember the feeling something was wrong, and it pulled us all into a kind of terrifying silence, like when you realize someone is standing on the edge of a cliff and just the slightest jolt could send them crashing. I looked around the room. The empty seats were like rows of cold white teeth facing the stage as if waiting for something to go wrong. The door at the end of the room was still ajar, no one in sight, but Michael's eyes were fixed on him as if he had just seen something only he could see. Michael, I called him again, emphasizing each word to bring him back to reality. He didn't answer. I took a cautious half step forward. My hand still held the guitar as if part of me was continuing the role while the other wanted to throw everything away and run to hug my little brother. What worried me most wasn't that he'd forgotten the lyrics. Michael had never forgotten. It wasn't that he was afraid of the light. He was born to be in the light. What worried me was his eyes, a look of confusion, doubt, and something deeper, darker, as if he'd heard a sound we couldn't. The white light on the ceiling flickered once. I don't know if it was a technicality or some coincidence, but at that moment, Michael took a step back. Children back away for many reasons: fear, surprise, pain, or feeling cornered. But I had never seen him back away from a stage. That night, he backed away from the thing he loved most. Jackie whispered, her voice as small as the wind, "Tito, what's wrong with him?" I didn't answer, not because I didn't want to, but because I had never seen Michael like this, so I didn't have a good enough explanation. My little brother, who could sing for 8 hours straight without getting tired, was standing in front of me, trembling slightly like a leaf caught between two opposing winds. "Michael, look at me." I spoke slowly, calmly, but each word felt like stepping on thin ice. He turned around. His eyes were wet, but not tears. It was emotion so pent up that it was almost overflowing. Then something I really didn't expect happened. He put the microphone down. No dropping. Michael had never been so careless, but he lowered the microphone to his waist as if surrendering to a battle we couldn't see. In that moment, my heart felt like it was being squeezed. Jermaine took a step forward, about to say something, but I held up my hand to stop him. I couldn't make him more frightened. Michael was like a small bird fluttering in my hand, like any loud noise would send him flying into the deep darkness. In the distance, the sound out the D wooden door creaking as a light breeze seeped in, a sound so ordinary that no one would notice it on any other day, but today the sound was sharp as a knife. I saw Michael jerk violently. That confirmed my suspicion, and what scared him wasn't in this room, it was in his head. I moved closer. Each step felt like stepping on fragile glass. "Look at me," I said. He looked, and for the first time in my life, I saw his eyes empty. A chill ran down my spine, not because he was scared, but because I realized Michael wasn't listening to us, and he was listening to something else, a sound, a memory, a fantasy, I don't know, but he was definitely somewhere else, not in this room. I reached out to touch his shoulder, but before I could, he blinked sharply, and as if called from afar. He took a deep breath, his head lifted slightly, and then he stood still again, in this time even stiffer than before, as if trying to keep himself from collapsing. I knew I had to do something immediately, otherwise Michael might be stuck in this state longer than I thought. I looked at the guitar in my hands. The strings, still vibrating slightly from my sudden stop, seemed to invite a bold decision. A crazy thought flashed through my mind, one that any rehearsal leader would call destructive, but I knew it was the only way to get Michael back. I tightened my grip on the neck of the instrument. My fingers slid into position to play a completely different beat from the original arrangement, a beat strong enough to jerk his mind back. I looked straight at Michael. He looked at me for a moment, just a second. But that second was the moment the whole room held its breath, waiting for me to act. And then I struck the string, creating a rhythmic shift so strong that the whole room jumped. The sound I made, a guitar strike completely out of sync, was like a thunderclap in the dry air. It was sharp, clean, and powerful enough to tear the thick air from the practice room. Marlon dropped his white gloves in surprise. Jackie stopped, then turned to me as if he couldn't believe I'd broken the music in the middle of rehearsal. Jermaine almost dropped his bass because my sharp thrust had completely destroyed the original beat, but I didn't care about that confusion. The only person I was watching was Michael. He gave the start I expected, not a panic start, but the kind that comes when someone shakes him out of a long sleep. His head lifted a little, his eyes moving as if searching the air for the sound, trying to understand why the familiar beat had disappeared. Michael, I called softly, but this time over my guitar. My guitar sounds became words. Every beat I played was directed toward him like secret signals only the two of us could understand. The second beat change I played came faster and more violently. The room erupted with each sudden burst of tones. I saw Jackie slowly adjust the beat, cautiously following the new beat. Jermaine looked at me for a second, uncertain, then started to join the train. Do you know the strange flow I had created? It was as if everyone was betting on me, as if everyone believed I knew what I was doing, but the truth was, and I didn't know. All I knew was this: I was doing this for Michael. He stood still, but his eyes were no longer in a trance. I saw his shoulders relax a little. His grip on the microphone loosened. A sigh, so slight, but enough to let me know my playing had reached him. I continued playing. My rhythm no longer felt like a rehearsal. It felt like a desperate plea, a string extended to pull him back down to earth. Michael closed his eyes for a moment, then he opened them. His eyes brightened a little. That was the moment I knew he was listening to me, no longer hearing the sound that had scared him since the beginning of the rehearsal, no longer trapped in an invisible void. He was listening to my guitar, his brother who had stood behind him since the early days of singing. I launched into a more powerful riff, purposeful. Marlon suddenly jumped in with an instinctive foot tapping motion, as if his body recognized his only chance to salvage the atmosphere. Jackie tapped out the beat, this time more firmly. Jermaine looked at Michael and then played the bass deeper, more firmly. Beat by beat, sound by sound, the group was weaving a musical bridge that would lead Michael back. The boy looked at me, his eyes met mine, and I really saw him come back. A small breath escaped his lips. In that moment, I was so close I could hear him swallow, as if trying to find his voice. I tilted my head, giving him a look that was both urging and protective. "Come on, little brother," I said with just my eyes. "Come back to us." And then his lips moved slowly, very slowly but surely. A small sound emerged from him, not a word, just a soft, trembling note. But it was like a needle piercing the invisible wall that had held him back all this time. I saw Jackie's eyes widen, Jermaine straighten. Marlon looked up hopefully. Michael's voice, even the first note, rebooted the entire Jackson 5 system. I responded immediately with a small, smooth transition, as if we'd practiced it for dozens of hours. Though I was really just reading his eye movements to find the right rhythm. Michael looked around, no longer afraid, no longer backing down. He raised the microphone slowly, as if regaining control he'd almost lost. Then he spoke. This time he really spoke the clear sound of a 7-year-old, but with the vibrato of someone who knew he had to hold on even though everything inside was crumbling. The song cut through the air like the first light piercing the darkness. That was the moment I knew he was back whole. The group joined in. The wrong arrangement I'd created a moment before had become strangely complete, a more powerful, more intense version, a little wild but full of life. I saw Michael follow along, his eyes flashing with a familiar light. The light of a little star who knew where he was meant to be. But in that moment, I also realized something terrifying. If I hadn't broken the rhythm, if I hadn't been crazy enough to break every rule, if I hadn't looked deep into his eyes and seen that silent cry for help, then we might have lost Michael in that moment, not in the physical sense, but in the spiritual sense, where silence can swallow a young heart. When the song ended, I put down my guitar, sweat dripping from my palms. I didn't know if it was because I'd played too hard or because I just faced the biggest fear of my life. Michael turned to me, and his eyes were no longer scared, but grateful and a little ashamed. But I didn't give him time to feel bad. I put my hand on his shoulder, just a gentle squeeze. "It's okay, little brother," I said, my voice low. "I'm here." He nodded, a very small nod, but enough to confirm that I had pulled him back in time. Little did I know that the moment I missed a beat would be the moment that would change the future of the Jackson 5. The room was still shaking from the rescue I had recklessly created. The thick air from earlier had vanished, but in its place was a strange feeling, as if we had created something we had not planned. Each note still hung in the air, clinging to the old wooden walls, the flickering lights, and the eyes of each member of the group. Michael stood in the middle of the stage, his chest heaving slightly as he started to sing again. He looked like he had just emerged from a long trance, but his eyes were bright again, like the kind of light that made people forget he was only 7 years old. I was about to go over to see if he was okay when, click, the door at the end of the room opened, and the person who walked in was our manager. If anything made my heart drop to the bottom of my stomach in a second, it was this unexpected appearance. He stood there, arms crossed, expressionless. His sharp eyes darted from me to Michael, then to the group, as if analyzing every line on our faces. Jackie straightened her back immediately. Jermaine put down his bass quickly, but tried to keep his composure. Marlon stood still, his face frozen as if he'd just been caught doing something sneaky. And I stood there, my hand still on the neck of my guitar, my heart pounding so hard I could hardly breathe, because I knew he'd just heard it all. The rule-breaking version, the off-key rhythm, the urgent riff, the instinctive coordination that no one had planned, all of it was on full display for the most demanding man in our rehearsal lives. He took a few steps into the room. The click of his shoes on the wooden floor sounded dry, like a judge's beat before giving his verdict. No one spoke. I could have heard a pin drop. He stood at the edge of the stage, looking straight at me first. His gaze was so piercing that I had to fight to keep myself from backing away. Then he turned his gaze to Michael. The boy gripped the microphone tightly. His eyes were shining as if he were waiting for a verdict. I could feel the tension radiating off him like heat. His small hands trembled slightly, but he tried to keep his body straight, strong, like a true artist. Finally, the manager took a deep breath, then spoke in a low, even voice. "So, how long are you going to hide it from me?" The question made my whole body freeze. Hide? Hide what? And I was about to open my mouth to explain that it was all an accident, that the beat wasn't intentional, that I had messed up the music just to get Michael back, but he raised his hand gently to silence me. "This new version," he spoke slowly, "unbelievably amazing." The room erupted in silent shock. Jackie stared at me. Jermaine fell back in his chair, clutching his head. Marlon opened his mouth, speechless, and I I stood there frozen as if struck by an invisible blow. "Tito," he said, pointing at me, and that guitar beat just now, daring, different, soulful. I felt my face burn, not from pride, but from the fact that I wasn't trying to be creative. I was just trying to save Michael, but he didn't stop. And Michael, he turned to my little brother. The way you entered the new melody, it didn't match perfectly, but that imperfection just made it feel more real, more powerful, different, very captivating. I looked at Michael, he looked at me, and we both knew it wasn't creativity, it was just trying to catch our breath after a panic attack, but the manager thought it was new artistic idea. He clapped his hands, the sound echoing loudly in the empty room. "I want you to keep it that way, no changes, no take-backs. Tomorrow night, show me this arrangement again." I almost choked. "Tomorrow night, do it again," Jackie stammered, but that beat wasn't in the plan. He looked straight at us, his eyes shining with a rare kind of excitement. "A plan? Sometimes plans only constrain artists," he said. What I just heard, that was the sound of an explosion, the sound of something unpolished but with the potential to reach the listener. He looked down at the microphone in Michael's hand. "Especially you, Michael, the way you sang that part, natural, instinctive, and emotional. I want you to keep that." Michael bowed his head a little, but I saw a flicker of shame and worry in his eyes. He didn't want anyone to know that the moment was born of fear, not creativity. And the manager turned back to the door, his hand on the handle. Need tomorrow night, on time, and don't let me down." The door closed with a louder click than usual. The room fell silent, and Jermaine was the first to speak, his voice low. "Tito, what did you do?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked at Michael. He was looking at his small hands that were shaking with fear, which the manager praised as if they had just created a moment of art. "I didn't mean to," I mumbled. "I just tried to save you." Michael raised his head. His eyes sparkled with an unreadable emotion, a mixture of gratitude, worry, and confusion, as if he were caught between two realities, the fear from earlier and the worry that tomorrow he would have to reenact a moment he didn't want to experience a second time. I knew this twist would change more than just the rehearsal. It would change the path we were on. And the scary thing was, tomorrow we would have to reenact that rescue moment as if it were a deliberate artistic decision, but who knows, maybe in the chaos. Something new was being born. The practice room after the manager left was filled with a deep silence, a silence not because we didn't know what to say, but because each of us was dealing with our own feelings. Jackie was still standing near the door, and his eyes fixed on the cold handle where the click had sounded. Marlon sat down on the floor, turning his white gloves in his hands as if he were holding something that would help him understand what just happened. And Jermaine paced back and forth restlessly, his hands restless, even though the bass was on the chair. And I stood in the middle of the room, my breath slowing in my chest, my guitar still hanging on my shoulder, heavy as a rock. I had just saved Michael from falling apart, but the price I had to pay was that tomorrow we would have to relive a moment that I didn't even dare remember. I glanced at Michael. He was standing a few steps away from me in the remaining pale light. He was looking down at his palm, his little fingers trembling slightly as if he were feeling the sound that had just escaped him. A sound that was both frightening and a turning point for the group. It raised its head as I approached. Its brown eyes were filled with emotion, a mixture of gratitude, confusion, and worry. "Tito," it said softly, its voice so small it seemed to shatter the air. "Tomorrow, do I have to do that again?" I sat down next to it, took the guitar off my shoulder and set it beside it. Nay, I know, I said, I know it's hard, but you don't have to do the same thing tonight. You just have to be yourself. It shook its head immediately. But tonight wasn't me, Tito. It was me stuck. My heart sank because it was right. It wasn't a shining moment. It was a moment of a 7-year-old standing in front of something it didn't understand, swallowed by a feeling so deep it almost lost itself. And the manager thought it was art. Michael bit his lip, bowing his head. I don't want people to think so. I tried to do that. I put my hand on his shoulder, squeezing gently. And they won't think that. Tomorrow I'll give you a beat, just like today. But the difference is, tomorrow you won't be afraid anymore. Michael was young, but his eyes lit up when he heard that. He needed a platform to stand on. And I realized from the moment he sang back in that faulty arrangement, my role was more than just the guitar player in the group. I was the rope that held him from the shadows that the stage lights sometimes created. I took a deep breath. Michael, do you know what you did tonight? He looked at me. The light reflected in his eyes like ore about to be polished. I thought I let everyone down. I shook my head. No, you gave us a version of music that I couldn't even imagine. You made me think fast, feel fast, and play fast to your emotions. You made us all go into unpredictable territory. And that is what people remember. Is that when he was silent, but his eyes changed as if he understood that from the fear just now, something else was rising. Jermaine came over now, his voice low but warm. Brother, we all followed Tito just to get you back. But in the end, you pulled us all up. Why Jackie approached, arms crossed. If the manager likes it, then it proves there's something. Marlon sat on the floor looking up. You did well, Michael. Didn't you see us looking at you when you sang again like, oh, it's back? The group laughed lightly. The first smile in minutes of tension. Michael bowed his head, but this time it was out of shyness, not fear. I stood up and held out my hand. Come on, come here. I want to see if you can do that note again, not out of fear, but because, want to own it. Michael put his small hand in mine. I pulled him up, and the group got into position, but this time we weren't tense. A new feeling crept between us, the feeling of people who had just walked through a storm and still stood. I lifted my guitar. I'll change the beat like before. You try to join in, but it doesn't have to be the same. Just be you. Michael nodded. I played a loop of the intro, the same powerful offbeat that had saved him. But this time the sound didn't cut through the silence like a knife. It blended with the group's breathing. Jackie picked up the beat. Jermaine went in on the bass. Softer, Marlon clapped for a backbeat. Michael closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and sang. No shaking, no panic, no darkness holding him back. The voice rang out, stronger than when he'd been frozen. In the clear sound sent shivers down my spine. Not because it was strange, but because it was true. It was all Michael. Not bound by fear, not driven by instinct, but the voice of a child who knew he'd just crossed a deep chasm. When he finished, the room fell into a different kind of silence, the silence of amazement. I put down my guitar. There, I said softly, tomorrow, you just have to do it exactly like that. Michael looked around, eyes shining, lips curving into a small smile. I think I can do it. I nodded, of course, because tonight you just created what they call a turning point. I looked at him, his small hands, the microphone still warm, the light reflecting off his hair like a halo, a moment of freeze, just a brief moment, but it changed everything. I know that years from now, when people talk about Michael Jackson, the star, the icon, the legend, they won't when the 7-year-old boy trembled under the lights on an empty stage. But I know, and I know, the legacy begins in that moment.